this lens, as beaten up and scratched up as it is, offered me quite a bit of enjoyment. What I love most about it, this lens offered me quite a valuable life lesson, at least as far as photography goes. And that is, it really doesn't take much to give me pleasure and joy. Stone Cold Guinness. Ah, such a wonderful taste. Very pleasing creaminess with a very, very strong, woody, I would say, chocolatey flavors. Enjoy chilled straight from the bottle. Oh boy. Am I enjoying this? You know, I didn't really used to go for dark beers. Mostly because I don't particularly enjoy high alcohol content beers. But this one, this is, I mean, I would surely, and rightly so, easily be accused of setting a bad example, but this is almost something that children should be able to have. It's just 4.2% alcohol per volume, so yeah, really lightly alcoholic beer, fantastic taste. What we have here is a Pentacon 30mm f3.5. Quite a small little lens. Very beaten up. Yeah, that's the proper way to describe it. The front element is severely scratched. Admittedly, with micro scratches from improper cleaning. I think somebody cleaned this with his or hers greasy shirt for years, because there's a lot of micro scratches. There's damage to the coating, to the single coating, if actually, to be quite frank, I'm not even convinced this lens is coated. Let me just shine some light into it, and yeah, I'm actually pretty there doesn't appear to be any coating at all. So this lens has plenty of micro scratches on the glass, a bit of haze, a bit of fungus, some optical imperfections in what actually does appear to be a single layer of coating. Back, I think it was early summer, May or June, a buddy of mine wrote to me on Facebook and asked me if I'm interested in this lens. I previously had no idea this even existed. I quickly jumped onto the interwebs to search for information about this lens, and I very promptly found out this is a copy of a rather famous Lydith 30mm f3.5. Now, with that said, there is very little information about this very lens on the net. There's hardly any video reviews at all, just a few forum posts here and there, but it was enough for me to pique my interest and raise my curiosity, because that Lydith that this is supposedly a copy of is kind of famous. Some call it legendary. And I found it quite odd. 30mm focal length is rather peculiar. We've all heard of 28s, 24s, 35s, but 30, I had previously never heard of this focal length. At 3.5 maximum aperture, this is not a fast lens by any stretch of the imagination. However, this buddy of mine, thank you Marcus, by the way, thank you for the opportunity, was very kind to let me borrow and test this lens without any money actually changing hands. So I took it for a spin for a few days, and only after that I eventually bought it. And on the subject of buying it, he let it go for really just a little amount of money. I think I paid just $10 for this. Yeah, I think it was it? Let me just quickly check. Yeah, I paid just a mere $10 for it. 50 lei. And while objectively speaking, you can argue that this lens is not worth any more than that, subjectively speaking, I love this quirky, beaten up, scratched up, messy, quirky little lens. Let me tell you why in this video. God bless the Irish. God bless the Irish. Excuse the crappy accent, but yeah man, nothing quite like a Guinness. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I want to ask you to kindly consider supporting my channel here. Watch this video, share it with your friends, donate a buck or two using the Buy Me a Coffee link down below, and with that said, let's talk business. This lens, as beaten up and scratched up as it is, offered me quite a bit of enjoyment. What I love most about it, this lens offered me quite a valuable life lesson, at least as far as photography goes. And that is, it really doesn't take much to give me pleasure and joy with photography. I used to go looking for legendary, famous, renowned lenses, fast apertures. I used to drool over eBay listings of the Konica 57mm f1.2 that sells for close to $2,000, which I still to this day desire. However, with much less of a passion than I used to. This lens taught me that it doesn't take a fast lens, it doesn't take a perfect lens, it doesn't take a mint, clean, and whatnot lens to give you enjoyment and at the end of the day good photos, because that's what really matters. What this lens taught me is that ease of use, good handling, small sizes, light weights are more important, at least as far as I'm concerned, because this everything here on this channel is just my opinion, somewhat educated opinion, let's say, because I try not to talk out of my ass. I try to back my opinions with facts, with actual knowledge and research, but at the end of the day, this whole channel is about my experience, my opinions, my thoughts. So the ancestor of this lens is the 1950s legendary Meyer Lydith 30mm f3.5, which was considered by many to be quite a desirable little lens. Really well built, tiny, razor sharp in the middle with decent enough sharpness as edge to edge. It eventually evolved into this. At the beginning of the 1970s, the Meyer Lydith became the Pentacon. It changed the barrel a little, it changed the branding, but other than that, this is the same lens. It's not only a copy. I may have been a little misleading by calling it a copy. It is actually the same lens. This is the Meyer Lydith. Now, how does this perform? By far, the most important characteristic of a lens is its image rendition. Do keep in mind that my copy is really kind of in a bad shape. As mentioned before, it's really scratched up. There's a bit of haze, there's a bit of fungus, there's a bit of coating deterioration. So take these examples with a grain of salt. These may not be entirely indicative of what this lens usually can do, because it has a very good reputation. That said, this lens performed really great for me. I was never let down. I think I only ever shot it wide open, but still, wide open, this lens produces decently sharp images in the center. But as soon as you move away from the center and go in towards the sides, it loses sharpness quite quickly. That's not entirely a bad thing as far as I'm concerned, because it serves to help in isolating your subject. Now, if you're shooting architecture, landscape shots, or anything that requires edge-to-edge sharpness, you're bound to always want to stop it down. And once you do stop it down, this lens produces really, really pleasant images. Image quality improves dramatically, sharpness increases quite substantially. So use this lens according to its flaws, work with it, not against it, and you're bound to be happy. Now, this is a low contrast lens. It's got what I suspect to be a single coating, if any at all, so it's prone to a bit of flaring, a bit of ghosting when hit directly by front light. Low contrast all around, with quite pleasing tones when shooting black and white, which is what I love to do. And for that, it is just a pleasure to use. Monochrome work is really one of its strong suits. Tones are really, really well rendered. Highlights tend to have this shiny metallic character to them, almost like a silvery shine, which is something I enjoy tremendously. Colors are really pleasant, however, perhaps not as punchy and saturated as you would prefer, but just as easily as you might complain, you could just very well drag the saturation slider in your post-processing software and achieve really, really punchy colors. However, colors are vivid and lively and have a certain playfulness to them. They're a bit on the cold side, slightly subdued and unassuming, with an almost elegant kind of character to them. Although quite on the slow side at f3.5, this lens produces quite a pleasing background blur. Perhaps thanks to the 10 blades of the aperture system, this lens produces quite a beautiful bokeh, even slightly stopped down. In certain situations, you can get a bit of a swirly action, and by that I mean the way the specular highlights tends to swirl and rotate around your subject in the background. But this is achievable at certain distances from your subject to the background. But that is easily achievable, and to many it may be a desirable result. It doesn't particularly bother me, nor does it excite me. Be that as it may, this lens is really a good performer. This is a very solid and decent enough performer. Now, let's keep things in perspective. This is not a lens I would use when I would be expected to deliver client work. Unless, of course, said client would accept or desire somewhat of an artsy vintage feel, because this lens has quirks and has certain flaws, let's call them, perhaps entirely characteristic of my particular copy and the state it's in. However, I do not expect it to perform much better in a better shape. Now, as far as build quality is concerned, this lens has aged quite well. It's entirely made out of metal and glass. Even the textured focusing ring is entirely metal. It rotates for about 180 degrees, sufficiently damped, allowing for precise focusing, if a bit stiff. The aperture ranges from 3.5 to f22 and is clickless. A peculiarity of this lens is that it's got a push-pull preset aperture type system. What I mean by that is that, much like the Helios, you set your preset desired aperture and that becomes a limit, let's say. But unlike the Helios, you have to pull on the ring to set your aperture system. For instance, let's say you would want f5.6 as your preset aperture. You would pull the ring, glide it to f5.6 and land it there. Then your entire aperture range becomes 3.5 to f5.6. The lens features a minimum focusing distance of 33 centimeters, allowing for quite a bit of close-up action. On a full frame sensor, it's got a diagonal field of view of 71 degrees. This comes with an M42 mount, but its ancestor used to also come in exact amount. A barrel length of 45 millimeters, a filter thread size of 49 millimeters, weighing in at 195 grams. With all that said, kindly consider supporting my work here if you find any value here, or entertainment, or why not both. Like, subscribe, join in the conversation down below. I do love getting your comments. I read all of them, even if I don't reply to all of them. Consider throwing a buck or two down my way using the Buy Me a Coffee link down below. This has been Radu. This has been my thoughts, impressions, and review of the Pentacon 30mm f3.5. Until next time, see you and bye bye.